Good morning, everyone. It is 8:11 Alaska time. Excuse me, Alaska Daylight Time. And I wanted to get on here and offer you both some words of encouragement and a practical skill that you can take away to immediately start changing your life. And I wrote some notes down because I really want to get this right, and it was really heavy on my heart this morning. Just want to get the message out. So if I could title this little chat, I would title it the K.I.S.S principle, K.I.S.S. Maybe you've heard about that before. We're going to talk about it a little more. And if there was a subtitle for it, and this is in relation to the skill, it would be all or nothing versus something is better than nothing. And we're going to discuss that a little bit more. But part of the reason why I wanted to get on today is because of all of the things that have been happening kind of in our world, in our life. There's a lot of emotional uncertainty, I would say, physical uncertainty, and probably the biggest one of all, spiritual uncertainty. You might be like, Heidi, what are you talking about? What I'm talking about is just the general heavy feeling I feel with all of this happening. And, my question to you, and maybe you can tell me in the comments, is do you feel a sense of heaviness? Is there a struggle that you're dealing with right now that seems looming or large? And I'm here to break it down and show you how it doesn't have to be looming and large. When some of this was all starting to happen, I posted a couple Lauryn Hill songs, and I don't know if anyone listened to her album. Literally, I treated that album like church for many, many years, and it has so many wise things to teach you, not just about one subset of humanity, namely Black people. It has something to teach you about all of humanity. When she wrote those songs, they were for everyone. And her entire intent in that is to emancipate your mind, right? So emancipate, free your mind. What do we have? Freedom in thought, freedom in our minds, freedom in our discernment or how we judge things, okay? So talking about freedom of mind, I want to talk about two areas where we can experience dissonance. And dissonance is a word where basically there's a disagreement. And something that's been coming up a lot for me recently is this cognitive dissonance. But many of you who know me, I'm also an anatomy and physiology teacher, and I want to parallel that with some visual dissonance that we can have as well. So what's cognitive dissonance exactly? Cognitive dissonance is when something you've been taught is not matching up with something else, right? Or it could even be a thought that you have is not matching up with something else. And I'll try to give like a really simple example of this. Let's say you follow a person on Instagram and they're beautiful and they have all the things, everything that you want, and you're just like, how can they be so perfect? They can't be that perfect. They're probably a horrible human who's just in it for the follows, right? So that's your initial thought. That's your preconceived notion that you have about this person. And then let's say you meet them and you're at some event, right? You are introduced to this person. Maybe it's even an intimate event where you get to know them really well. And right off the bat and consistently through your whole interaction with that human, you see, oh, they're like genuinely a really awesome human. And they're really kind. And they're consistently kind. That's strange. I had all these other thoughts about them that kind of pitted me against this person. So that's just like a very basic example of cognitive dissonance, where you have one idea and then another idea presents itself and they kind of rub up against each other, right? So how does this happen in other areas of the body? Well, it happens in many other areas of our body, not just in our minds. But one of them is when it has to do with visual input. Now, after this video, if you're really curious, and in fact, even if you're not curious, just for fact checking, you can go look this up on your own. There's something called blind spot, and I'm going to call it blind spot theory for this moment. But this idea of blind spot, and I do this testing with my students all the time. And basically, how you test for the blind spot is you take a piece of paper that has a repetitive image on the whole piece of paper. Like maybe it's hash marks, or maybe it's little diamonds, right? It could be anything. And then you take one image and insert it into the photo. And then you take another image and insert it over here in the photo. What you're going to do is you're going to focus on one image and pull that piece of paper close to your eyes. And as you're focusing on that, you want to be aware of what's happening to this other image here. Right? Because what's going to happen is as you pull that piece of paper closer to your eyes, you're going to get to a certain spot where you will always be able to see this image, but this image over here will all of a sudden disappear. And the reason why that image disappears, and it disappears and doesn't become nothingness, right? It disappears and becomes whatever the background is. The reason why that disappears is that image is being reflected into this one area of our eye known as the blind spot. And the blind spot is where our optic nerve comes into our eye. And there's no photoreceptors in that specific area. It's just essentially axons from neurons. I know I'm using a lot of big words and stuff, but just bear with me here, okay? Bigger principle coming. So there's axons, right, that are just in that area. That this tiny part of our eye is not meant to be receiving visual input. It's meant to be gathering all the nerve sources to bring it back into our brain. So when that image is reflected in that one special area where we don't have photoreceptors, instead of just seeing nothing for a brief moment, our brain recognizes that something's missing and it fills it in with what it assumes to be correct, which is that background. So I just want you to let that sink in for a moment, right? That if our brain isn't witnessing something clearly, it will replace it. It will replace that actual image with something that it knows to be like roughly correct. Okay? So how does this tie into the emancipation of your minds? Well, again, emancipation of your minds is just freeing your mind to think clearly for yourself. And now more than ever, there's a lot that really goes into this. But I would love to see humans really take sovereignty over their thoughts and the messages that they're receiving and really try them out for themselves, right? Is this thought real? Do I feel like it's real? Is there truth in it for me? And we'll talk more about that because I believe that we're all individual research projects with a test subject of N1. And I'll talk more about that another day too. So what's a skill that we can take away from knowing this information about cognitive dissonance, or we have trouble figuring out how two things fit together, and also understanding this blind spot theory? What I feel like I observe in humanity is that when people receive conflicting information, instead of taking action in one direction, they freeze and do nothing. I know that that's my personal response, right? We have some responses to stress. Those three responses that you hear a lot are fight, flight, or freeze. I'm a freezer. So if something happens, I feel really overloaded, I don't know what to do, I just freeze. Okay? So I'm kind of speaking to the freezers out there, but really anyone. I just freeze. Well, we're receiving a lot of information. We're having to sift through a lot of information, and I don't want that to bog you down. I still want everyone here to be living their best life, finding joy, connecting with their animals, going outside, loving on their partner, loving on their children, if you have children, loving on any person you can love on right now. Really, truly. So instead of doing nothing, I want to present you with this other skill set idea. This idea of all or nothing versus something is better than nothing. I came very much from a mindset of all or nothing. And there's a futility in that. because either you're going all in and you're not going to stop until you get that thing or do that thing, or you're doing nothing at all, right? That's what it means by all or nothing. And the reality is, with so much going on in our worlds and in our lives, that's not practical, right? And it sets us up for mental or emotional failure, which never feels good, right? So having known I came out of that all or nothing mindset, I'm shifting more into the something is better than nothing mindset. Okay? Something's better than nothing. And several years ago at this point, I started educating myself on a lot of social movements that I saw coming up because I wanted to know how I wanted to feel about them. I wanted to educate myself and figure that out. I also wanted to figure out if I needed to be taking action and what that looked like. And I was curious, and so I let my curiosity lead me there. Some of the things that I was looking up during that time were fat phobia, like racial inequality, and or looking at reparations, both for Native Americans and for African Americans. That was something I was curious about. What else was I really curious about that was kind of a social thing? I'm always curious about socioeconomic status. Anyways, maybe I'll cut that part out. Who knows? But I got to this point of something is better than nothing. I need to do something. Oh, zero waste movement. That was the other one. So I follow people who are extremes in all of these areas. And if you're curious about people who are extreme in those areas that I could send you to, that are all or nothing, I can send you to those accounts. And I use them for information. And what I take from them are skills that help me, that are helping me be the human that I want to be. So one of those, talking about the zero waste movement. So this idea that we're generating less waste, right? I think about the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. I heard a podcast once where the woman has said, there's no coincidence why the first 2 R's are reduction and reusing. And yet we always seem to just be talking about recycling, which is the least energetic, favorable thing. So how can we be reducing? How can we be reusing, right? So I did focus a little bit of my areas on my life in all those areas. I started recycling. Duh, no brainer. We have the resources. It's not that hard. Just started recycling, right? It's kind of a newish thing for us. We've only been doing it for several years. Reusing. I started reusing things. I wash my plastic bags. I'm totally aware of BPAs. I know that plastic bags aren't supposed to be used a lot, and so I don't use them a lot. I use glass containers. I use other glass containers that I save. Use those as Tupperware, so I'm not even having to buy them, right? If I bought like some pickled vegetables or something. That's one way I can reduce, right? Or even my consumption of clothes. I'm no longer into fast fashion, right? Your girl wants to look good, clearly. Check out my poncho. But I'm just reducing how much I'm consuming in that matter. And then reduce, reuse. Oh, yeah. And reducing. Okay, so I kind of covered them all. So how do we start small, right? Because the zero waste movement is like, you don't have any waste at all. And I'm not talking about zero waste right now. I'm just using it as an example. But like, that's not realistic for me. I know it's not. Maybe someday that'd be great, but I need to just start by doing something that's better than nothing. And so the last thing I want to present you with while I'm talking about this, something is better than nothing, is a skill that I hope you do today. And that is moving your body. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about the future self that I want to create, the future of humanity that I want to create, and trying to identify ways in which I can slingshot both myself and humanity to that position, right? How can I be that future self? Well, my ideal highest future self would be someone who can spend days and days in the backcountry of Alaska or wherever, hiking and exploring and connecting with nature. That's where I feel most whole. That's where I feel the least amount of judgment. That's where I feel like I learn all my lessons. So I want to be physically able to do that, right? I don't want to go out there and be like, I can't do this. This is too hard. So I identified in my life that I needed to start moving my body more, and I recognized that my body felt better when I moved it more. And so I quickly got rid of some limiting beliefs, and one of those are that I'm lazy, or that I can only walk up the stairs one time a day. And I'm kind of joking when I say that, but I know that almost everyone watching this will identify with that idea of when you go to the grocery store, you must grab all the bags and bring them in one go. So I got rid of that. And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to just do whatever's needed. And that will allow me to move my body in an extra way that's very easy. So when I get groceries now and I come home, I bring some in. That's a manageable amount. And then I go out and I get more. And I bring those in and I go out and get more, right? I'm never like, oh, I don't want to go down the stairs, or I don't want to walk here. I just do it. And it feels really good. And it gives me this small sense of like victory or pride. I know that sounds really, really weird, but for those of you out there who aren't used to moving your bodies, this is a great way to start. Another way, and if you're in my class, if you've taken a class from me, or you're a close friend of mine, before the coronavirus thing even started, I shouldn't say before it started, before it was big news over here, I recognized that I wanted to do some type of lymphatic flushing. I didn't think I wanted to go here, but I'm just going to go here, I guess. Lymphatic flushing, right? We have a whole lymph system, and our lymph system is essentially our main line defense system. And it's a fluid that gets circulated throughout our body. It gets reabsorbed through interstitial tissue. So let's say we have, white blood cells in our with our red blood cells, and those are going throughout our whole body to cleanse and repair and heal and do different things and fight bad guys. And those white blood cells will get pushed out of our blood into to areas in between all of our different organs and layers of things, and they will be reabsorbed by our lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system will then take them to areas for them to be either recycled, or which basically just means like killing them off and making new ones, right? Or it'll be taking them to different carrier areas where then it can go back to the heart, and it can help just like cleanse the body from the inside out in this way. Well, our lymphatic system doesn't have a way of propelling itself. Our circulatory system, or our blood system, has our heart that propels blood all around it, right? But our lymphatic system doesn't have that, and it is a fluid-based system. So the only way that we can move lymph through our body is through body movement, right? So that's moving your body in all the different ways, right? Doing everything you can, and you have lymph systems throughout your entire body. So what's one way that you can start to stimulate that to help jumpstart your immune system? And I started doing 100 jumping jacks a day. But you don't have to start with 100. Maybe start with 25, right? And make sure you're doing them right, because you don't want to hurt yourself, okay? So stay on your toes, make sure you're using all your joints, keeping things loose, right? And just doing that in the morning, right? Doing some simple body movements. It doesn't have to be a crazy workout session. It could literally be 2 minutes. Something is better than nothing when it comes to moving your body, okay? And that will just form as a type of protection. So let's go over what I wanted to talk about. Oh, and I didn't even tell you the K.I.S.S principle, which is the title of this whole video. So K.I.S.S, traditionally I've heard it as keep it simple, stupid, but I don't like the word stupid because I really don't believe anyone is. So I'm going to change to keep it simple, silly, because I think way more of us are silly. At least I know I am. So keep it simple, silly. All or nothing versus something is better than nothing. I hope that you latch on to that something is better than nothing, whatever it is in your life. Just give yourself permission to do the tiniest thing and be stoked that you did it, right? Be so happy that you did that thing. So I've given you some spots to research and look up, right? You can look up cognitive dissonance. You can look up the blind spot and blind spot tests and blind spot theory. You can rewatch this if I was all over the map. That's just how it came out of my brain. And then you have a takeaway skill. You can start really, 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 really small to take baby steps, the tiniest little baby steps, and each one of those steps is like a freaking badass accomplishment, right? To get you to where you want to be. Whatever that looks like. That looks like you're a kind, loving, and caring human, right? If you believe that all humans matter. Oh, I shouldn't have said that word, but you know what I mean. And okay, I'm even having cognitive dissonance about that. I'm like, oh God, I just said all lives matter, and there's like this thing about blah, 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 blah. I know how I feel about everything. This is like a life work for me in some ways. You can listen to Lauryn Hill's Unplugged album. It's wordy, right? You could even read it if that worked better for you. But feel those things deeply into you, into your body, and just start small. Start small. Get a vision. Know that you're capable of whatever change you want to see in your life, in your community, in your global community. But it starts here. It starts with you. And it starts very, very small. And you can do this. Talk to you later.